This is the recorded solution for the first homework. We're going to be going over chapter 3, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, and then chapter 4, numbers 1 and 2, or 1 and 4. Okay, so for chapter 3, I'll mainly talk through the first few of these, and then when we have ERDs, I'll actually do those in Lucidchart. So the first question, it wants you to identify primary keys and foreign keys in each of the tables, and the tables are in figure 3.1 on page 108. So for the first table, employee, the primary key is EMP code. The foreign key is store code. For the store table, the primary key is store code. Foreign keys are region code and EMP code. And then for the region table, the primary key is region code, and there are no foreign keys. Number 2, do all tables exhibit entity integrity? So the simple answer is yes, but the reason is that for all of the values in their primary keys, so let's look at the employee table. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 21. All of them are unique, and none of them are null. Same thing for the store table in the store code field, and for the region table in the region code field. As long as they're all unique and there are no nulls, they have entity integrity. Number 3, do the tables exhibit referential integrity? So for referential integrity, we need to look at the foreign keys. So for the employee table, we had a foreign key of the store code, and if you look at all the values in the store code field there are corresponding records with those numbers as the primary keys in the store table. And so that means it has referential integrity. So if I'm looking in the employee table and I look at record number 10 for Rose Jones, I go over and see that Rose has a store code of 4. So if I go over and look at the store table, I can actually find that record. That's why it has integrity. I can find the record, I can pull up the values. So the store name for Rose is Attribute Alley. Okay, so for the store table, I look at both region code and EMP code and look at the values in there and look in the actual tables where those values come from and make sure that there are actual values there that correspond to them. And because there are, this table also has referential integrity. The last table, the region, has no foreign keys, so you would say it's not applicable. I had a couple of students that answered no for that table, that it does not have referential integrity. That answer is incorrect. It actually does. I would say yes, it does have referential integrity if it's a yes, no. But the more appropriate way of saying it is that it's not applicable because there are no foreign keys. Okay. Number 4, describe the type of relationship between store and region. It's a many-to-one relationship, and the next question wants us to model it. And so I'll do that. It's pretty simple. Need to share, screen share my Lucidchart. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to create a new document, and I want it to be a, it's been a while since I did this. I want an ERD. Maybe I need to press a different plus document here. Okay. So for this, I'm going to need an ERD. See if I can Search up there for ERD. Here we go. Here's some entities. This has changed a little bit since the last time I used it. Used to be that we could just, okay, more shapes. There we go. So more shapes. I should be able to get the ERD library here. So, oh, entity relationship, that's it. Okay. Save. Cool, now I've got entities. All right. So I'm going to drag over an entity and call this one. I can double click here and call this store. And I want another ERD over here. Double click here and call this one region. And finally, I have a relationship between the two. So I'm going to drag from region to store. And if you actually drag from one to another, it automatically makes it a one-to-many, which is actually perfect here because for each region there are many stores. Each store has is in one region. So pretty easy there. All right. Now, okay, let's go back to quit sharing the screen. Actually, I'll keep sharing the screen because our next one's going to be another diagram. I'll save this one. Save. I'm going to call it homework 1, and that was number 5. Okay. Okay. Let's close that. Okay. The next question that we had, number 7, wants us to describe the types of relationships between employee and store. And this is an interesting one because each store employs many employees, one of whom manages the store. So in reality, we actually have 2 relationships. One is a one-to-many relationship between store and employees with the employees relationship. But then we also have a manages relationship that's one-to-one. One employee manages one store. So let's come back into Lucidchart, do a new document, and hopefully my ERD library is available. Looks like I'm going to have to add it again. I'll make that come apart automatically. Okay. Entity relationship. Save. Okay. Now I'm going to have 3 entities here. I'm going to have employee, I'm going to have store, and I'm going to have region. Now we already know we have this relationship from the previous problem. One store has many, or one region has many stores. We also know each store employs many employees, but the other relationship there is that one employee manages one store. So we need to change this side of our relationship there to a 1, and now it's 1-to-1. One employee manages one store. And we're not messing with optional or mandatory ones in this chapter. We'll talk about those a little bit in the next chapter. I didn't, yeah. I think I did take off points if you said that it was mandatory one on the store side of things, because that's actually incorrect. Not every employee is a manager, so you can't say that each employee manages exactly one store. They could manage 0 stores, or they could manage 1 store. So the right side of this one, of this relationship, would have been 0 to 1, not a mandatory one. But again, for the sake of this chapter, just modeling like this is fine. Okay, let's save that diagram. This is homework. Oops. Homework 1. This was number 8. And close. All right, let's go ahead and do, for chapter 4, both of these are ERDs. So it makes sense to just stay lucid chart here. So the first one, chapter 4, number 1. Okay. It says use the following business rules to create an ERD, write appropriate connectivities and cardinalities in the ERD. And on this one, we are going to use some of the optional one, mandatory one and only one, because it does make sense in the context of what we're doing to do it that way. So, create a document. Okay. It says a department employs many employees, but each employee is employed by only one department. Okay, I need to add my ERD entity relationship. Okay, and I'm going to draw and bring one of these over. So, whoops, didn't work. Okay, so that talked about department. And employee. And it said a department employs many employees. Okay, so department employs many employees. Okay, and each employee is employed by only one department. Now, it hasn't told me anything about mandatory or optional yet, so I'm just going to leave it like it is. Further business rules may change that. In fact, the next business rule is going to change that. It says some employees, known as rovers, are not assigned to any department. So what that means is for the employee participation in this relationship, each employee can have only one department, but some employees don't have a department at all. So I'm going to change the left side of this relationship to an optional one, 0 to 1. So 0 could, the employee could have no department, or they could have one department, but those are the only options. Okay, the next business rule tells me a division operates many departments, but each department is operated by only one division. Okay, so now I've got division, bring that in here, stick it down here. Okay, it operates many departments. Okay, I'm not typing the names of the relationships on here, although it is good practice to do so. And you probably should in your homework, just to make sure that I can understand what you mean. Okay, division operates many departments. It doesn't necessarily tell me anything about mandatory or optional, so I'm just going to leave it like it is. The next business rule tells me an employee may be assigned many projects, and a project may have many employees assigned to it. Now that's interesting. We've got a many-to-many between employee and project. And this is where a lot of you lost some points on your homework, because when you have a many-to-many relationship, you need an associative entity between the two in order to model that relationship. And I'm going to call this employee project, abbreviated a little bit. So the way we model that many-to-many is we go from employee, whoops, grabbed it instead of made it relationship. Here we go. Employee to project, and from project to employee through that associative entity. So this one can have both. That's just the way that you model the many-to-many relationship. Okay. Doesn't tell me anything about mandatory and optional yet, but the next business rule does. It says a project must have at least one employee assigned to it. So that means that the right side of this one is not strict many, it's actually one or many, mandatory. You can also say in these associative relationships, and in fact it might be good practice to say, it's always going to be a mandatory one on the other side of this. So I can say that this is a mandatory one on the employee side. And the reason for that is that you're not going to have a record in this associative entity unless a record exists over here. So for each record that shows up here, there is definitely going to be an employee, and there's definitely going to be a project in that record, partly because they're part of the primary key of that table. So you can always say when there's an associative entity that the opposite sides are mandatory ones. Okay, let's see what else we have here. One of the employees manages each department, and each department is managed by only one employee. Okay, so employee and department, we've got a manage relationship. Over here, and this relationship is a one-to-one relationship, so I'm going to change that from many to one. However, we've got another thing going on here, and this is actually significant. We do need to recognize that for each employee, not every employee is going to be a manager, and this is more of kind of understanding the business context. But the reality is, this side of this is actually going to be 0 or 1 because of the reality that not every employee is going to be a manager. The same is going to be true with the next business rule. It says one of the employees runs each division. Each division is run by one employee, and it's going to be, again, on this side of it, an optional one, because not every employee is a division runs a division. I'm going to move this over a little bit so they don't overlap. Anyway, so that's that problem. We've satisfied all of our business rules. We have some mandatory relationships, some optional, and some that it doesn't give us enough information to really know one way or the other. Okay, let's save that. Homework one happens Chapter 4, number 1. Pull up that. Okay. And we'll close that, and then we'll do our last ERD here. Okay, new document. Let's add entity relationship here. And then we'll do number 4. Okay, number 4 says create an ERD using the following requirements. So the first thing that it tells us is an invoice is written by a sales rep. Each representative can write many invoices, but each invoice is written by a single sales representative. Okay, so I have 2 entities there. I have an invoice and I have sales rep. Okay. And it tells me that sales rep writes many invoices. Okay, it doesn't necessarily tell me that a sales rep has to write an invoice, and it doesn't tell me that an invoice has to be written by a sales rep. It just tells me that just the basic one-to-many there. Okay. Invoice is written for a single customer. However, each customer can have many invoices. So let's put customer up here. Again, this one is a one-to-many relationship from customer to invoices. And it doesn't necessarily tell me that there's any kind of mandatory or optional cardinality there. Okay, the next part tells me an invoice can include many detail lines, each of which describes one product bought by a customer. So let's go with invoice lines. And it said I can have one or many. Again, it's not necessarily telling me anything about optional or mandatory cardinality, but it also does tell me each line describes one product. So we have another entity over here. And in fact, you could read that as invoice line is an associative entity between product and invoice. So the invoice can have many products, and a product can appear on many invoices. Therefore, the invoice line is the associative entity between the two. With an associative entity, I told you in the last problem, you can definitely say that it's a mandatory one relationship on that side of it, because an associative entity does not exist apart from the primary tables that participate in that relationship. Okay. It says product information is stored in the product entity, and that just kind of reinforces the idea that we need that product entity, that this ERD, that's part of it. And then the last one says a product's vendor information is found in the vendor entity. So we've got one more entity here, and that's going to be vendor. And each vendor can sell many products. Each product is represented by one vendor. And again, that one is a little bit just understanding the business context, but hopefully that one was fairly straightforward. All right, that's it for this one. There really wasn't much as far as mandatory or optional relationships in this one. That was focused on more on number one. So hopefully this one was a little bit more simple. Homework 1. Okay, and that's it for this solution.